Hi guys, welcome back to Maru Studio. Today, let's explore 2D animation in Effect Maker. In this tutorial, I'll help you get familiar with some basic concepts using visual scripting. We'll learn this by creating a falling motion effect, a technique widely used in game effects. Let's get started. But first, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any exciting videos about Effect Maker. Import assets. I have 4 images illustrating 4 objects named circle, hexagon, square, and triangle. First, I'm going to add all of these objects to the project by selecting the Assets tab. Then, I'll upload them all as individual images like this. The size I usually use for these images is 256 by 256 pixels. This helps a lot with controlling the project's file size and memory use. I'll show you that in a bit. Now, let's go back to the Object tab to add the image objects to the project. I'm going to add them one by one. First is the triangle. Next is the square. And the same goes for the remaining 2 image objects. Okay, now I have all 4 objects added. Let's check the effect limits. You can see my images take up very little space in the project, yet they still look great and sharp. Next, I'm going to tweak their sizes a bit so it's easier for you to follow along. I'll set them all to 200 pixels in width and 200 pixels in height. Okay, cool. I will move all object to the top of screen by set Y, position is 500 pixels. Do the same for all object. It's not super important, but I want to add an overlay to make things easier to see by adding a color filter object. Move it to the top position. This means the color filter will sit underneath all the other objects. I'm going to make the brightness darker and crank the intensity up to 100%. Everything looks much clearer now. Now, for the main part, let's make all the objects move. Animate the object. The idea is when you tap the screen, the objects will fall down in order. First, I'll start with a tap trigger. A tap trigger makes it easier to control individual elements before combining them into a larger block. Add a transition node and a set property node. Select the circle object. In the select property menu, choose Y position because I want this object to move down along the Y axis. Connect the nodes like this, then set the start value to 500 and the end value to -300 over a duration of 4 seconds. Let's see how it looks. Okay, it works. The circle object moves when the screen is tapped. Now, let's move on to the second object. I'll add a delay node, so this object starts 1 second after the first one. Duplicate the transition node and the set Y position node. Change the object to hexagon and connect the nodes like this. When the screen is tapped, the circle object starts moving, and after 1 second, the hexagon follows with the same duration and distance. Nice! Now do the same for the square and triangle objects. Select the 3 nodes, delay, transition, and set Y position. Duplicate them. Connect them up, and don't forget to change the object to the square. That's it. Exactly what I wanted. Now, let's move on to the last object. Duplicate, connect, change to triangle. Okay. Let's test it again. Everything is working perfectly now. Next, we need to make them move in a continuous loop. In this case, when the first object reaches the endpoint, it should return to its starting position and keep running in a cycle. To do this, we're going to need a variable. This variable will store a value, true or false, once the first object finishes its movement. I'll name it loop, with data type is Boolean. The default value will be false. Cool. We've got our variable. Now after the transition node, I'm going to add a set variable node to change the value of the loop variable. Connect it to onEnd, which means once the transition finishes, we'll update the loop variable value to false. Now, we don't need the tap trigger anymore, we'll use frame update instead. Add a limiter node to ensure only one signal is captured. Connect them together like this. Once you see the objects running automatically like this, it means we've done it right. Next, duplicate the set variable node for the loop variable and check this box. Connect after reset to start. You'll notice nothing has changed yet, but that's okay. We need to add a if node, connect the input to frame update and the output to the limiter. Add a get variable node for loop and connect the value to condition. What all of this means is that the subsequent nodes will only run if the loop variable is true. Connect false to reset. Now you can see they are working exactly the way we want. This part is a bit tricky, but let me describe it again. When the circle object is at the starting point, loop equals true. When the circle object is at the endpoint, loop equals false. Then change the loop value back to true and repeat the step. It's as simple as that. Now you can see all the objects are running automatically. This is because the frame update node starts on every frame of the effect. We want them to run only when a trigger is activated, like a screen tap, for example. I'm going to add another variable named isGameplay with a boolean type and a value of false. The objects will only run if isGameplay is true. Add an if node and connect them like this. When the condition is false, the objects will stop running. Then add a get variable node to get the current value of isGameplay and connect it to the condition. Now add a tap trigger and a set variable node. Actually, set variable is correct. When we tap the screen, we'll set the isGameplay variable to true. Alright. Now let's try tapping the screen. The objects start running once we perform the tap. Everything is finished. Okay, record to trigger animation. In case you want the user to press the record button to trigger the animation instead of tapping the screen, you can do it like this. Add a record node and delete the previous tap node, then just reconnect it and you're good to go. When the user stops recording, I'll add a reset state node to return everything to its original state. Press the record button, stop recording, and everything goes back to how it started. Use variables to store repeated values. If you notice, you see that the start and end values in the transition nodes are all the same, starting at 500 and ending at -300. Suppose I want to change the starting position of all objects to 800 and the end to -800, so they stay off screen. In that case, I'd have to manually change the start and end positions for every single object. To be more efficient, I'll use variables to store these identical values for all objects. I'm going to create two new variables. Y position start with an initial value of 800 and Y position end with an initial value of -800. To get the values, just right click and select get variable for both. Let me tidy this up a bit so it's easier to see. Now, Connect the two variables to their corresponding inputs. Okay, cool. Duplicate them and connect them to the transition node of the next object. Keep duplicating, connecting, duplicating, connecting. This way, whenever you change the variable's value, all objects will update automatically. Saves a lot of time and effort, right? When the effect starts, you can still see the objects here because we haven't changed their initial positions to 800 yet. Let's change the Y position to 800 for all objects. 800. 800. Let's check it again. Looks good. Everything is working exactly right. Random X position. The main idea is this. Before each object starts moving from its initial position, it will automatically randomize its x-axis position. To do this, we're going to need a random node. I'll set the random values between negative 250 and 250, then add a set property node, select the object you want to randomize, then choose X position, connect the input from onTrigger and the output to start. I usually make it a habit to tidy up the nodes so they're easy to look at and manage. Now let's try hitting start record. You can see the circle object has started at a different X position instead of being in the center like the others. Let's wait a bit more to see it more clearly. Keep an eye on the circle. Okay, cool. Everything is working great. Now just duplicate them and move them after the delay node and before the transition node of the second object. Give me a second, I'm rearranging things to group the nodes together so they're easier to see. Here, place the two copied nodes at this position. Let's connect them up. Don't forget to change the object to hexagon. Let's tidy these up a bit. Now on to the next one, duplicate them, move them between the delay node and the transition node, and connect them. Let's switch the object to square. Keep going. Duplicate and move them to the final object's position. Link them up. Change the object to triangle. And that's it. We've finished setting up the random nodes for all the objects. Now, let's see the results. All the objects are working exactly as expected. Awesome. And that's a wrap. We've finished the basic Visual Script tutorial on object animation, falling loops, and random X positioning, perfect for those of you building game-style effects with Effect Maker. I hope you found this video helpful. If you enjoy this kind of content, please hit subscribe, like, and comment on the topics you'd like to see about Effect Maker so I can create more videos for you. Goodbye.